Thank you for joining your Pinellas County Property Appraiser, Mike Twitty, for this educational session designed for first-time Florida homeowners. We are pleased to have the opportunity to pass along some information. Shown here is a list of topics we will cover today, starting with who does what. Mike Twitty was elected into office in 2017 and has over 30 years of valuation experience. Since coming into office, Mike has introduced cutting-edge technology to improve customer service and the mass appraisal process. Often confused with the tax collector's office, the property appraiser's office is a separate agency. Here is Mike to explain.
So, yes, the property appraiser is not the tax collector. We have two very distinct roles. We're obviously valuing all the parcels, and then we're also administering all the exemptions and the assessment caps, and we'll get into those as we go forward. And then we do the GIS mapping for all the tax parcels. It's a good link.
Sorry, it won't cut off.
And then what the tax collector does is, they're effectively the DMV. So they took over the state DMV operations years ago and handle that at the county level. You can also get your concealed weapon permit, hunting and fishing licenses, birth certificates, all those types of things through the tax collector's office. And then, of course, they at the end are the ones that end up sending out tax bills, and they do the collection process. And that occurs in November. So just wanted to make sure you guys understood that, especially coming from other states. We are already basically talked about what we do here at the property appraiser's office. At the end of all those activities, we have to certify the roll to the Department of Revenue and convey that to all the various taxing authorities around the county and the state. And then that's what they use to bang against their millage rates to levy their taxes. So the taxing authorities here in Pinellas County, we have 56 different taxing authorities. So that's your unincorporated county, that's all your cities, that's all your special districts and your fire districts. So totals up to about 56 different entities that have the ability to levy millage rates. Excuse me. And obviously that's to provide the various services that those different taxing authorities provide. So every year they have to go through that process, determine, all right, what do we need to budgetarily satisfy our citizens' needs and in our role in government to perform these various services. So there's a little snapshot of some of those taxing authorities. We basically talked about their role. So the timeline. So in Florida, January 1 is a very important date. That's the date we always value. So that's the effective date of value. So even though our values are literally, we just sent them to DOR, Department of Revenue, on July 1. That's our deadline to get the values to them. The effective date of appraisal is actually January 1. It takes until basically, 6 months later for us to get all that buttoned up and packaged up to turn those values in. So and that's because we have sales that are still spilling into the new year, deeds that don't get filed till later. So there's other things that that delay that process. So March 1, another important deadline is the homestead filing deadline. That's the timely file deadline. And then right now you can, what do we say? What's our September date this year?
16th, September 16th.
September 16th is our late file deadline. So if any of you all here have not filed for homestead yet, you can do it today before you leave this space, or those out in virtual land, you can do it online as well. So we encourage you to do that. So if you still need to file for 23, which is upcoming, or if you need to file for 22, you could still late file up until the 16th of September. So if you owned and occupied prior to January 1 of this year, you could potentially qualify. So make sure you check that out. You still have some time.
Excuse me, do you have to file
No, we'll send you a renewal notice, and as long as nothing has changed, you'll get a card from us, and if you don't, say you're renting it or something like that, or, you know, you've sold it, then it will stay intact.
Well, what about the widower exemption? Can you also file late for that, or when do you apply?
Yes,
Kevin?
And I would just like to ask everybody, for the benefit of the people online as well, to save questions till the end. And that way we can address everybody's questions and make the presentation go about an hour, which is intended, but
Right.
we will be here all afternoon to answer all your questions if need be.
thank you.
So other important dates, there's a few of them on here, but the biggies are obviously the January 1, the March 1. Some of these are internal, you know, certifications when we deliver values, that type of thing. August 23rd, the third week of August, is when we send out the notice of proposed taxes, also known as used to be known as the trim notice, which stood for truth in millage. So it was a notice to let property owners be aware of what's potentially coming. It shows what the potential taxes can be based on different levied millages based on last year versus what the taxing authorities may be proposing, and then whether they adopt the proposed budget or whether they roll back to the prior years. So watch for that notice. It's a very important notice. It also allows you to know if you've received your exemptions. So down in the bottom right-hand corner of that notification, that notice, you'll see whether your exemptions have been applied or not. And if they haven't, that's when you want to reach back out to us and find out why. And then in November is when the tax bills go out.
So how are property taxes determined? Our office is responsible for basically three values that you will see on your notice of proposed property taxes. The first is just market value. That is the market value of your property as determined every January 1 of every year. Okay? And then you go down to assessed value. Now, assessed value can be much different than market value depending on how long you have owned your home. Once you establish homestead, and let's say 23 is the first year you establish homestead, your assessed value from that point forward, January 1, 24 and forward, can only go up a maximum of 3% or CPI, whichever is lower. Okay, and I'll get into that later. So your market value can continue to increase, but as far as your assessed value, that is limited once you've established homestead. And then taxable value is assessed value less any exemptions you may have, such as your homestead exemption. And we'll get into all the other exemptions as well. So value, taxable value in this case, times rate equal taxes. So we are responsible for values. The taxing authorities, as Mike explained earlier, are responsible for the rate applied to that value. And then it equals your ad valorem taxes. So if you have a taxable value of 100,000 and your millage rate adds up to 20 mils, which is roughly 2%, 20 mils is 2%, your annual taxes would be $2,000 in a very simplistic way. Again, a millage rate terminology, and a mill is $1 for every 1,000 of value. So $20 for every 1,000 of value is 2%. And then all the millage rates that are delineated in your property tax bill, as well as your notice of proposed property taxes, times the taxable value gives you your total taxes. There are certain areas of our county that also have additional special assessments, which is a non-ad valorem tax. Such as a stormwater, underground utility, street lighting, fire and rescue. That is in addition to your ad valorem taxes. We do not administer those. The ad valorem, the non-ad valorem taxing authority does, but we put them on your notice of proposed property taxes, as well as your tax bill, so you can see the total taxes you're paying for a particular year. So how do we value property? Primarily, like any, we do mass appraisal. We do not do individual values of homes, but there are primarily three approaches to value that we use in our office: the sales comparison, the cost, and the income approach. And it's mass appraisal versus fee appraisal. In other words, we put similar homes, similar areas into a model, and we value them all similarly based on square footage, do they have a pool or not, et cetera, et cetera. We primarily use for residential the sales comparison approach. So as of January 1, 23, January 1, we look at sales in 22 to determine the value of that home January 1 of 23. And sometimes look at January, February sales as well. But primarily we're looking at homes, prices that sold that were similar to your particular property. And anytime you have a question about your value, as Mike said, as soon as we get our roll approved by the Department of Revenue, we will post those values on our website sometime in mid to late July. You are more than happy to contact us and ask about your value, especially if this is the first year you applied for homestead. Your home will go to market value. So that this is the time to contact us and see if you're comfortable, and if you're not comfortable, you can always contest it by filing a VAB petition, which we'll go into later as well. So anybody in the audience or anybody online, if they purchased in 22, okay, we have some people here who did purchase in 22, 23 will be your first year that you are eligible for homestead. You may have inherited the homestead of the person you bought it from if they had homestead, okay? So, but you have to apply for 23. Some people make the mistake that said, oh, it's automatically done, you know I own it. No, you have to submit an application. So if you haven't, as Mike said, you still have time to do so for 2023. And there could be some people out there who just bought in 23. Once again, you will, if that home had homestead on it, you inherit the homestead of the former owner until December 31 of 23. You are responsible for applying for your homestead for 2024, which you can do right now. All our online applications are automatically for 24 at this point. If you haven't done it yet, you go to www.pcpao.gov and apply for homestead for 24. We can get you approved, and then you don't have to worry about it, even though the deadline is March 1 of 24 for a 24 application. Go into a little bit of value trends. What has happened over the years, that blue bar here is total taxable value. As you can see, in 2007, we peaked at about $120 billion in Pinellas County. That was right before the great real estate recession, where everything crashed. As a matter of fact, we went from 120 down to 75 in 2012. So that was a precipitous drop in value. Since 2012, however, we've gone from 75.8 to 214 billion, almost triple. Unprecedented growth, especially in 2021, 22. So we're 214 billion in taxable value just in Pinellas County. The yellow bar, in market value. The yellow bar is taxable value. Okay, so there's that difference between market and taxable, which comprises the Save Our Homes cap. You are limited to your increase. okay, once you establish homestead, and the exemptions that come off of that as well. So you can see taxable value is only 124 billion. Okay, so there's a significant, it's on $90 billion of value that are not taxed for most of your millage rates. And then in Pinellas, as those who are new to Pinellas, this is the new construction line, which is the right axis. So we're a little over $1 billion recently in the last 3 or 4 years of new construction. We don't have a lot of new construction in Pinellas County compared to other counties because we don't have a lot of land left. We're a peninsula on a peninsula, and if you want to build something new, typically you're tearing something down that exists there or going up, as you can see by condos that are rising in downtown St. Petersburg for sure. So the residential market. So in 2022, the median sales price of a resident of a single-family residence was $409,000. This has increased from, let's just pick a year, 2017 of $236. So prices, as we all know, have gone up substantially on a cost per square foot from 17 to 22, 158 to 291, again, almost double. Okay, so the transaction price has been rising dramatically over the last 4 or 5 years, where it was relatively steady from 12 to 14, although still rising. So broken down between single family. Sir, you want to take another snapshot of that? Did I miss that? Did you get the snapshot of that previously?
Thank you.
Okay. So the difference between single family and condo. Okay. Median sales price of single family is $450. Condo and townhomes is $293. And this is right from the Pinellas County real estate stats for May of 23. You can see that month supply was 1.7 months for single family and 3.1 months for condo. That month supply has lengthened recently. It used to be maybe 10, 15 days in the 21, early 22 timeframe. And median days to contract and closing also shown there. So the residential sales trend. So the top solid yellow line is 2021, and the axis indicates the number of units. So you can see in 2021, we were hovering for the most of the year, starting in March, between 1,800 units a month and 1,600 units a month. That dropped substantially in 2022. Especially beginning around June, July, the latter half of 2022. Prices started to rise. What else rose? Interest rates. Okay, so those who wanted to buy a home and needed a mortgage, that mortgage payment all of a sudden got a lot more expensive as interest rates rose from 3 to 6 to 7% in order to get a mortgage. So that caused the market, at least the number of units sold, to go down. And you can see in 2023, it's even below, which is the small blue dotted line and the small yellow, even below 2022 values, right, or 2022 units. So it's the market has slowed substantially. Taxable value of new construction, primarily the new construction is residential. And when I say residential, more than likely it's somebody buys a home and demos it and builds a new home on it. Because there is very little land left in Pinellas County. The balance of multifamily rental apartments, there's a ton of multifamily rental apartments going up all over the county, and then 18% is in commercial. Okay, we'll get into the fun world of exemptions. So why would you apply for an exemption? Number one, it gives you a $50,000 exemption off the assessed value of your property, which is worth anywhere between $500 and $900 annually off your property taxes. And it allows you to cap your increases in the future. There are a myriad of other exemptions that are available, primarily related to age, being over 65, health, being disabled or not, or being a veteran with a disability. Okay, veterans do not automatically get an exemption, but they do get an exemption if they have a disability as determined by the VA. Each one of these you have to apply for. They're not automatic. You have to either, you can apply online or come into our office to do so, and we'll be happy to help you and explain the proper paperwork you need and documentation you need in order to qualify. We believe everyone should be entitled to every exemption that they qualify for. It's not something we want everybody to get the maximum exemptions possible. So I heard this question brought up earlier. The homestead exemption, okay? It's $50,000, but it's $50,000 in two different bands. The first $25,000 is exempt for your assessed value between 0 and 25. The second $25,000 is not exempt at all, okay? But the third $25,000 is exempt from 50 to 75. So if you have a $75,000 home in assessed value, you get the full 50. If you have something less than 75, you get the first 25, and then that difference between 50 and 75. So it's not automatic 50,000. And then above 75, there is no exemption for the homeowners. And that second 25 in the yellow is not an exemption for school taxes. You still have to pay school taxes on that second 25, which amounts to about $150 more a year, as if it would apply to all of them. When they instituted the exemption for the second 25, they didn't want to affect the school funding, so they just said, the legislature said it is not deductible, or excuse me, an exemption for school taxes. Now we'll get into the Save Our Homes. This is really the biggest benefit of filing for homestead. As I mentioned earlier, once you qualify for homestead, for people in the audience, your first year is 1/1/23. January 1 of 24 forward, your assessed value for tax purposes can only go up a maximum of 3%. It's 3% or CPI, whichever is lower. Here's an example of two homes, same neighborhood, same lot size, same square footage. The property on the left was bought in 2020. Therefore, first year qualified for homestead was 21. Their 22 taxes after that first year qualifying for homestead were $4,769. The owner on the right owned and bought in 1993. They've had homestead ever since. They've been subject to that Save Our Homes cap. They're only paying $767 in taxes. Now, we get that complaint all the time. Why is my neighbor paying so much less in taxes than I am? And this is the benefit of the Save Our Homes cap. Fair or not, the legislature decided back in the mid-90s that we didn't want to tax long-term resident Floridians out of their home. So they limited the tax increase. And now that you have homestead, yours will be limited as well. And when your neighbor buys in 2040, you're going to be paying less than they are, hopefully, if market values continue to rise. So 1992 is when the Save Our Homes cap came in. Again, limit the assessed value increase to the lesser 3% or CPI. So you can see, what has CPI done since 2010? So over the last 14 years, starting in 2010, CPI has only hit above 3% 3 times. Unfortunately, 2 of them are in the last 2 years, and more than likely 2023 CPI, which affects 24, will also be above 3%. But that assessed value cap is the maximum of 3. But you can see between 2012 and 2021, it very rarely came close to 3%. So with all that massive growth in market value, there's been a big gap created in all those homes who were homesteaded between market value and assessed value that you're not paying taxes on if you're a homesteader. All caps reset on January 1. That's the example I had earlier. The home on the left want more taxes than others. You buy a home, the next January 1, you're at market value automatically, unless there's portability, which we'll get into. And then there's also the non-homestead cap. If in fact you are not homesteaded for a variety of reasons or own a commercial property, that assessed value can only go up 10%. So if market value starts rising above that, you have a gap as well that you're not paying taxes on, again, but for school taxes. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So here's an example of how Save Our Homes work. What we have here is an example where market value is going up 5%, assessed value is going up the maximum of 3%. So that the following year, after you qualify for first years, you're equal, market equals assessed. You qualify for homestead. The next year, you're capped at 3, market value is going up at 5. So taking that forward through year 7, you all of a sudden have about $44,000 that you're not paying taxes on because you're capped at 3% on the assessed value once you have established homestead. And that difference is called the Save Our Homes benefit, meaning you're not paying taxes on that difference. You're only paying taxes on assessed value less your exemptions to determine taxable value. So over the years, values rise and fall, right? Especially like the example I used in 07 crashing to 012, that market value came right back down, okay? But it can never, market value can never be lower. Assessed value can never be higher than market value. Once they meet, they ride together, okay? And now if you're looking from year 6 to year 8 on this chart, the last 5, 6, 7 years, you've seen market values rise, assessed values only go up by that Save Our Homes cap. So in Pinellas County, we have about 380,000 residential properties, of which 64% are homesteaded and 36% are not. Why aren't they homesteaded? A, some people don't qualify. Some people are not Florida residents. It's a vacation home. They have an exemption somewhere else in another state in the United States. You can only have one exemption. So if you want to apply for homestead in Florida, you have to meet the residency requirements of the state of Florida, meaning you have to become a resident, i.e. driver's license, auto tag, and you have to remove your exemption from the state you moved from if you still own the home. You cannot have 2. And a married couple can only have 1 homestead exemption. You can't own 2 homes and claim 2 exemptions. If you do get married, the next January 1, if you still own both homes, one of those has to be removed. You cannot carry 2 homestead exemptions. The non-homestead cap, again, what was happening, if you remember 02 to 07, commercial properties were getting taxed out of their properties, right? Because market value was going crazy before the great crash. So they said, okay, let's institute a 10% cap on the non-homestead property. So they're not getting taxed out of their commercial property or that restaurants, little motels on the beach, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, again, why that 10% cap was instituted. But that difference between market value and assessed value for the non-homestead properties, you're still paying school taxes on the full market value. And school taxes represent about 1/3 of your tax rate. So as market values rise, as they have been, there's still a substantial increase in your tax bill because of school taxes, because that is not exempt. That 10% does not count for school tax purposes. Portability. Again, a provision that came in 2008. They were looking at Florida property owners and say, well, you know, I have owned my home for 25 years and I have this big difference between my market value and my assessed value. And I want to buy another home. I either want to upsize because my family has grown, or I want to downsize because I've retired, the kids are gone, and I need a smaller property, a less square footage. So what Florida did is say, you can take that difference with you. Okay, if you establish homestead in another Florida property, doesn't matter where, as long as you have homestead in anywhere in Florida, you can buy another property, establish homestead, and take that difference between just market value and assessed value with you. Okay, as long as you establish homestead within 3 years, and that's 3 January 1s. Which I will explain. So estimating portability is quite simple. Okay, you have the home you sold. Let's say you sold a home in 2022. That had a market value on January 1 of 22 of X. It had an assessed value of Y. That difference you can take with you. Okay, you buy another home in 22. Your first year of homestead is 23 on a new home. You look at that market value in January 1 of 23, compare it to the January 1 of 22 home you sold. If it's greater, it's an upsize. If it's lower, it's a downsize. You multiply it by the amount that you could take with you, then you get that moved to your new property. But it is limited to $500,000. So there are a lot of homes that have, especially on the water and barrier islands, that have huge Save Our Homes caps, because the market value is here, the assessed value is here. Let's say they have $1.5 million. When you move, you can only take $500,000 with you. You can't take it all. And all that is handled in our tax estimator. So you have 3 January 1s in order to establish homestead. So if you sold in 22 and you have not yet found that home that you want to move into and homestead it, January 1 of 22 is the first January 1 that counts. Then 23, then 24. You have to establish homestead by 1/1 of 25 in order to take that portability with you. If you don't, you lose it. That used to be only 2 January 1s, but Mr. Twitty got legislation approved to expand that, because the true meaning of it, you should have 2 years. But if you sell in December, you really only had 1 year, because that first January 1 was the year you sold, and the second one was coming up soon. But that was expanded in 2019. Is that correct, Mike? I believe.
2020.
2020. It was a vote of the citizens of Florida. Required a 60% vote, but it did pass. And and that was necessary, because what was happening was somebody sold in December, they put a contract on a condo that was supposed to be done by the next December, and there were delays. And once that passes January 1, they lost their portability. So, I mean, hurricanes happen at this time of year, right? Which causes delays in construction as well. So this has alleviated a lot of the issues where people were losing their portability. Notice of proposed property taxes. You will, this is, and I can't reiterate this enough, This is the most important document you will receive from our office annually. We are required to mail it. It will be mailed this year on August 21st. Most of you will receive it by the 23rd or the 24th, which gives you an estimate of what your property taxes will be. The top section shows the market value, assessed value, and taxable value for the current year in blue. Okay? If in fact market equals assessed, you have no exemptions. If you believe you qualify for an exemption because you owned as of January 1 of 23, you still have time to file for exemption for 23. Please read this document carefully because it will show what exemptions you have or don't have. It also gives you the budget hearings as to when they are. You have a right to attend all the budget hearings of the taxing districts, to go to those meetings and voice your concern about whether that tax rate is too high. So it's a very important document. Now, we will have that on our website. It will be posted on August 21st. And before you get it in the mail, you can go online and look for it, okay? And please do. Again, it's a very, but what it says on the top, and I'll go back to it, it says, do not pay, this is not a bill. What do most people do?
Pay it.
They throw it away. They don't pay it. Some of them try, but the tax collector won't accept it because that is not your final taxes. It's the most likely taxes that you're going to get billed, but there's still a possibility that those tax rates would change between then and the tax bill. We also include an informational supplement with the trim notice that explains if you haven't gotten homestead yet, you believe you qualify, or any other exemption, please come in, make application, because once 25 days beyond August 21st, which happens to be September 15th, which is a Friday, if you come in on Monday the 18th and you want to apply for an exemption for 2023, by state law, we have to deny it. You cannot, you are not entitled. You've had from January 1 to September 15th to file for that exemption. We can't go beyond that date. And the reason is we have to prepare a roll to send to the tax collector, okay? So the tax bills can be created. So there is a hard and fast cutoff by state statute that any application. Now, if we're still waiting information from you, okay, you can bring it in if you've applied before September 15th. You can bring it in after that, and we can still grant you that exemption, but an application must be made no later than September 15th or earlier. On our website, we have the tax estimator, which is a tool that was instituted back in early 2017, which allows you to estimate the property taxes of your property the year after you buy. Because in a lot of cases, let's go back to that example where that lady who owned her home since '93 was only paying $769 in taxes. Well, let's say somebody bought her home for the market value probably is around $400,000. Their taxes are going to go up about 10 times the next January 1. Okay, you can go on and estimate taxes the January 1 after you buy. It will also compute portability for you if you have a home that you sold that has portability. It's a very useful tool. Unfortunately, most of these services out there give the taxes that are existing on the property. They don't give the taxes that will exist after you pay what you do. So it will say, oh, taxes are only $769 on this property. Well, you're in for a shock when they turn out to be $7,000 the following year. So all you have to do is enter in the property you're estimating taxes for, estimate the purchase price, and it will spit out what your taxes will be the year after you purchase. A great tool that we encourage everybody to use. Okay, our new website, .gov. It is out there right now. We encourage you to use it. Both websites are out there, .org and .gov. But soon we will start a countdown on .org and say it's going away, and we hope that by the middle of July, there will be only one website, which is .gov. Very similar information, a lot more enhancements to the current website. It is easy to drive. Most of our users are, property owners, realtors, appraisers, title companies, contractors, et cetera, but it's a great website. We believe it's the top website in the state of Florida as far as all the information that we provide. We're very proud of it. And there you can see the number of users and page views that we have on an annual basis. And to wrap up, buying and selling a home, all this information is on our website. It tells you what you should be looking at when you're buying a home or selling a home. All this information can be accessed in a PDF format on our website for ease of printing and mailing. Sign up for our newsletters, follow us on Facebook, or attend one of our sessions, which you are doing right here today. The next series coming up is the property tax exemptions.
No.
No?
Website.
Oh, the website, that's correct.
Yeah.
So we will be showing you the ins and outs of navigating the new website in our next information series. So if you want to attend that, please do. It will be very informative. And one of the other pieces of information that is that we like to do in this is there is a lot of deed fraud going on in the state of Florida, where the unsuspecting, a lot of people who are older, maybe in an ALF, somebody files a deed and says, well, now I own your property. You can sign up for this free service at the clerk of the court. It's very easy to do. You go to propertyfraudalert.com. It's right on the front page of the clerk of the court's website. Register yourself, your email address, your phone number, your name, and anytime anything is recorded and anything that is close to your name, you will get an alert immediately. I signed up for it, and there are notices of commencement with regard to permits. There's mortgage payoffs, there's new mortgages, et cetera, that are filed. It's very important. And then my initial is Kevin J. McKeon. Well, I get alerts if there's Kevin P. McKeon. So it's a really, really great service. So you can immediately see if that relates to you and your personal property. So thank you all for coming today. We will now we have 13 minutes left. Any questions out there, Kyle, that have come across that we can answer for you? I know it's a lot of material in a short period of time. This will be available, correct, Kyle, in a YouTube video if you want to view it again on our website. So there's all kinds of opportunity for you to go back and look at it. We appreciate your attention and the fact that you did join us today. The more we can educate our citizens about what we do, the better off all of us are. And we hope you found this very informative. Questions? Wow, everybody understood what I said. That's awesome. Mike, you want to say anything?
No, just great job, Kevin. Thank you. Thank everybody again for attending, and heavily encourage those that do use the website on a daily basis. A lot of our business users, especially anybody throughout our real estate communities, whether they're a real estate attorney or a title agent or a realtor, even those in the construction industry, try to tune in for our July session. So that will help ease any transition pain between the older site and the newer site. I encourage most people, if you spend 10 minutes with it, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. If it, I know we're moving people's cheese a little bit, and that always causes a little bit of trauma, but I promise you that there is a lot more information in the new site, and most of it is easier to get to. There are things that you probably didn't even know were in the old site that now you can find, and then we've added a lot of new, pretty cool tools that will help people in their daily actions on the site. So thanks again for attending, and we hope you guys have a great rest of your week.